Recorded. Yes, thank you, robot lady voice. And we should start with prayer.
Oh, yes.
I haven't been
please.
doing that because it isn't Bible study, so we can't say the prayer for studying the sacred scriptures, because this isn't exactly what we're doing, although one could say we're studying it in refraction, if you will. Since we did a lot of Bible last time, 2 weeks ago, a lot of Bible. And today, in doing scene 11, we're going to be doing commentary on that same Bible story, Genesis 3, that we read and looked at closely 2 weeks ago. So the Lord be with you.
Spirit.
Let us pray. Direct us aright, O Lord, in all our doings, by thy most gracious favor, and further us with thy continual help, that in all our works, begun, continued, and ended in thee, we may glorify thy holy name, and finally by thy great mercy attain everlasting life, through Jesus Christ our Lord.
Amen.
Amen. When last we met, we made some provisional assignments, at least for the first read through of scene 11, and we'll see how far we get with just reading and not commenting. But if anyone has a comment, make some noise in between speeches, and you'll be called on and can make the comments, because that's very much part of what we're doing. We will do scene 11 twice, but not in one night, because it is quite long.
Almost 20 pages.
Yes, almost basically a fourth of the whole script, as Professor Richmond has redacted it. So our parts, as decided previously, what? Okay. Bud was going to read Adam, and Louise was going to read Eve. And Charlie and Sharon were also going to be on call for those parts. Matt was going to do Satan, and Patsy was going to do sin. Right? So everybody knew about those. And we double cast Adam and Eve because they're the biggest parts, and we wanted to make sure everyone was here. And now all four of you are here. So
Yeah, I forgot to read through this.
quite all right.
You forgot.
It will be a surprise to all of us. Okay.
Lightning will strike.
Disconnected. Ready to air.
Good evening, Monica. Good to see you. All right, everybody. I need my list of names. Ursula, can you hear?
Yes, Tiffany. Yes, I can.
Wonderful. We can hear you. There you go.
Connected to iPhone. Connected to iPhone 2.
Okay.
And
So
there's Gabby. We had to get her out of town in order to get here.
all right, let's get underway. Let's mix this up. Let's have Bud read Adam, Sharon read Eve, and Matt, if you'll do Satan. Patsy, do you want to read sin, or do you want to?
What? I'm happy to read it.
Okay, terrific. All right, any questions about who's doing what? All right. Eve has the opening lines of scene 11. It's the Garden of Eden. The two of them enter. And if you're not speaking, let's have everybody mute yourselves, please. So the only people, unless you have a question, if you have a question, you unmute yourself and speak up between speeches. But we'll start with.
How do we mute ourselves?
Hold on a second. I can mute everyone. Why don't I do that?
Thank you.
And then people can unmute who are speaking. Okay, so Sharon, you are our first. Eve, go ahead and unmute yourself. Is that? There you go.
Okay.
And I'll put the lines up, and Sharon is probably reading from the paper. If If you don't have the paper, follow along on the screen.
Adam, well may we, Adam, well may we labor, still to dress this garden, still to tend plant, herb, and flower, our pleasant task enjoined, but till more hands aid us, the work under our labor grows. Let us divide our labors, thou where choice leads thee, or where most needs, whether to wind the woodbine round this arbor, or direct the clasping ivy where to climb, while I in yonder spring of roses intermixed with myrtle, find what to redress till noon. For while so near each other thus all day, our task we choose. What wonder if so near looks intervene and smiles, or object new casual discourse draw on, which intermits our day's work, brought to little, though begun early, and the hour of supper comes unearned.
And Bud is Adam. Bud, can you unmute?
There you go. Well, hast thou motioned, well thy thoughts employed, yet not so strictly hath our Lord imposed labor as to debar us when we need refreshment, whether food or talk between, food of the mind or the sweet intercourse of looks and smiles. For smiles from reason flow, to brute denied and are of love the food. That's as far as I got.
Sorry.
Okay. Love not the lowest end of human life, assist us, but if much converse perhaps thee satiate, to short absence I could yield, for solitude sometimes is best society, and short retirement urges sweet return. But other doubt possesses me, lest harm befall thee severed from me, for thou knowst what hath been warned us, what malicious foe envying our happiness, and of his own despairing, seeks to work us woe and shame.
That such an enemy we have, who seeks our ruin, both by thee informed I learn, and from the parting angel overheard. But that thou shouldst my firmness therefore doubt to God or thee, because we have a foe may tempt it, I expected not to hear. His fraud is then thy fear, which plain infers thy equal fear that my firm faith and love can by this fraud be shaken or seduced. Thoughts, which how found they harbor in thy breast, Adam, misthought of her, to thee so dear?
Can you go up further? Yeah. Oh, a little too high. There we go. Firm we subsist, yet possible to swerve, since reason not impossibly may meet some species object by the foe subordinate, and fall into deception unaware, not keeping strictest watch, as she has warned. Seek not temptation then, which is to avoid were better, and most likely if from me thou sever not, trial will come unsought. But if thou think trial unsought may find us both secure, then thus warmed thou seemest. Go, for thy stay not free, absence thee more. So in thy native innocence, rely on what thou hast of virtue. Summon all, for God towards thee hath done his part. Do thine.
With thy permission then, and thus forewarned, chiefly by what thy own last reasoning words touched only, that our trial, when least sought, may find us both perhaps far less prepared, the willinger I go, nor much expect a foe so proud will first the weaker seek.
Before Satan starts, this would appear to be the first time the couple are parted from one another.
Mhm.
And that answers one of the questions. How is it that Satan gets to Eve and is speaking to her without anyone else? So why are they parting for this moment?
They're parting so that they can both work on things and be more efficient. At least that's the explanation.
Right.
Division of labor.
Division of labor is the main thing. There's also a wonderful line in Adam's speech. I'm going to stop the share so I don't confuse everyone with scrolling quickly. But it was a wonderful it was a wonderful line about being alone. There we go.
For solitude sometimes is best society.
Exactly. For solitude is sometimes best society. It's a wonderful line. That's near the top of page 61, I believe.
There was some Greek or Roman poet that said, I am never in such good company as when I am alone.
Now that's either a saint or a misanthrope, right? Okay.
Yes.
Because if you are alone with God, you might be a saint. You might also be Satan. But if you are alone just with yourself, what are you?
A misanthrope
Solipsist.
and a
Yeah.
narcissist.
If you're alone with just yourself, you're lost.
I was just gonna say lost.
Yeah. You
I
are
guess it's
in,
lost.
exactly. You're in a kind of madness. But solitude is sometimes best society. And here's the best part of it, the second part of that same sentence. For solitude sometimes is best society, and short retirement urges sweet return. Right? This is along the lines of distance makes the heart grow fonder.
Right,
Right?
right.
To be apart for a time and get our own internal house in order sometimes makes us better ready to return to the relationship, the union, stronger and better able to serve the other, to serve our spouse.
Which she clearly does not have. She is reckless and prideful and certain.
In what leads you to say that?
All of the things that she says. Well, our foe is so proud he couldn't possibly attack me. You
Yeah.
should have every confidence. I'm shocked. I'm crushed that you don't. It is an insult that you don't think I'm powerful enough, having been warned and overheard the angel, to hold my own against some fleeting temptation. My faith to you and to God is at least as powerful as any temptation I will meet.
Right.
I interpret, when I first read through this, I interpreted that she was already still taken by that dream that she had that sin had caused. And she's been itching to figure out how she can do this and how she can get alone so she can get to that tree. So I thought that this has been on her mind.
Gotcha. Okay. And yeah, there is a certain pridefulness in that. But she doesn't do it without Adam's what? Permission. With thy permission then, and thus forewarned, chiefly by what thy own last reasoning words touched only, that our trial when least sought may find us both, perhaps far less prepared, the willinger I go, nor much expect a foe so proud, will first the weaker seek. Okay. Yeah, there is a little bit of prideful certainty there. Okay.
I wanted to get back to the division of labor for a minute.
Okay.
There is a prominent anthropologist, Henry Wallace, who thought that the division of labor was the first alienation, the first fall out of the ideal tribal communist society. And that it was when division of labor started that people started to get alienated from each other.
Interesting. And they're actually doing both right here, aren't they?
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah. Interesting. All right, let's keep that in mind. And now let's hear from Satan. Matt? Hold on, where was I? Constantly messing with the technology. There we go.
Satan.
Satan lives. All right.
But Matt's not
Thought.
there. Sorry.
Thoughts. Whither have ye led me with that sweet compulsion, thus transported to forget what hither brought us? Hate, not love, nor hope of paradise for hell. Hope here to taste of pleasure, but all pleasure to destroy, save what is in destroying. Other joy to me is lost. Then let me not pass occasion which now smiles. Behold alone the woman, opportune to all attempts. She fair, divinely fair, fit love for gods, not terrible. Though terror be in love and beauty, not approached by stronger hate. Hate stronger, under show of love well feigned, the way which to her ruin now I tend.
And enter, Satan calls in sin as serpent. Satan retires and watches. And remember, in Milton's telling, sin is the daughter of Satan in the way that Athena was the daughter of Zeus. Patsy?
Wonder not, sovereign mistress, if perhaps thou canst, who art sole wonder, much less arm thy looks, the heaven of mildness with disdain, displeased that I approach thee thus and gaze. Thee all things living gaze on, all things thine by gift, and thy celestial beauty adore, a goddess among gods, adored and served by angels numberless, thy daily train.
What may this mean? Language of man pronounced by tongue of brute, and human sense expressed. The serpent, subtlest beast of all the field I knew, but not with human voice endued. How camest thou speakable of mute, and how to me so friendly grown above the rest of brutal kind, that daily are in sight?
Let me interrupt for a moment. Milton is answering a question here. In the prelapsarian age, before the fall, do all the animals talk, or is it just the serpent? He says it's just the serpent. You can see she's quite shocked, Eve is, by hearing the serpent talk.
Empress of this fair world, resplendent Eve, easy to me it is to tell thee all. I was at first as other beasts that graze the trodden herb, of abject thoughts and low, as was my food, nor aught but food discerned or sex, and apprehended nothing high. Till on a day roving the field, I chanced a goodly tree far distant to behold, laden with fruit of fairest colors mixed. Amid the tree now got, where plenty hung, tempting so nigh, is that supposed to be high? Nigh,
Yeah.
to pluck and eat my fill. Sated at length, ere long I might perceive strange alteration in me, to degree of reason in my inward powers, and speech. Thenceforth to speculations high and deep, I turned my thoughts, and with capacious mind considered all things visible in heaven, or earth, or middle, all things fair and good. But all that fair and good in thy divine semblance, and in thy beauty's heavenly ray united I beheld. No fair to thine equivalent or second, which compelled me thus, though importune perhaps, to come and gaze and worship thee of right declared, sovereign of creatures, universal dame.
Before you start, Eve, I- yeah, I was looking away from the screen when you asked your question. The word is nigh, and it means near.
Oh, okay.
Where plenty hung, tempting so nigh,
Okay.
as in so near, so close. So,
There's that word tempting.
yes, tempting by flattery
Mhm.
and something else. Eve?
Serpent, thy overpraising leaves in doubt the virtue of that fruit in thee first proved. But say, where grows the tree? From hence how far? For many are the trees of God that grow in paradise, and various, yet unknown to us. In such abundance lies our choice, as leaves a greater store of fruit untouched.
Sin leads Eve to the tree.
Three.
Serpent, we might have spared our coming hither, fruitless to me, though fruit be here to excess, the credit of whose virtue rests with thee. Wondrous indeed, if cause of such effects. But of this tree we may not taste nor touch. God so commanded, and left that command.
Indeed. Hath God then said that of the fruit of all these garden trees ye shall not eat? Yet lords declared of all on earth or air, queen of this universe, do not believe these rigid threats of death. Ye shall not die. How should ye? By the fruit, it gives you life to knowledge. By the threatener, look on me. Me who have touched and tasted, yet both live and life more perfect have attained than fate met me. By venturing higher than my lot. Shall that be shut to man, which to the beast is open? Or will God incense his ire for such a petty trespass, and not praise rather your dauntless virtue, whom the pain of death denounced, whatever thing death be, deterred not from achieving what might lead to happier life, knowledge of good and evil? Why then was this forbid? Why but to awe? Why but to keep ye low and ignorant, his worshippers? He knows that in the day ye eat thereof, your eyes that seem so clear, yet are but dim, shall perfectly be then opened and cleared, and ye shall be as gods. Causes import your need of this fair fruit. God is humane, reach then and freely taste.
Great are thy virtues, doubtless, best of fruits, though kept from man and worthy to be admired. Thy praise he also who forbids thy use conceals not from us, naming thee the tree of knowledge, knowledge both of good and evil, forbids us then to taste, but his forbidding commends thee more, while it infers the good by thee communicated, and our want such prohibitions bind not. But if death bind us with afterbands, what profits then our inward freedom? In the day we eat of this fair fruit, our doom is we shall die. How dies the serpent? He hath eaten and lives, and knows and speaks and reasons and discerns. Here grows the cure of all, this fruit divine, a virtue to make wise. What hinders then to reach and feed at once both body and mind?
Before I read the stage direction, did the serpent eat the fruit?
No.
No, they didn't eat the fruit of the tree. They did sin and fall.
They did.
So they did that which the angelic beings who followed Satan did, that which the apple or the fruit in a sense represents. But it's a misleading statement if it isn't absolutely false. All right, Eve eats the apple, sin joins Satan, both remain watching, and she has a soliloquy.
She does.
All right.
O sovereign, virtuous, precious of all trees, in paradise of operation blessed, not without song, each morning and due praise shall tend thee, and the fertile burden ease of thy full branches offered free to all, till dieted by thee I grow mature in knowledge, as the gods who all things know, though others envy what they cannot give, and perhaps I am secret. Heaven is high, high and remote to see from thence distinct each thing on earth. And other care, perhaps, may have diverted from continual watch our great forbidder, safe with all his spies about him.
And then there is a stage direction, the first of many, which simply says, Astarte enters, one of the fallen angels, hears the rest of the speech, then joins Satan and sin. I'll read those stage directions, mostly more and more beings joining one or the other of the parties, the bad guys and the heroes.
But to Adam, in what sort shall I appear? Shall I to him make known as yet my change, and give him to partake full happiness with me? Or rather not, but keep the odds of knowledge in my power without co-partner? So to add what wants in female sex, the more to draw his love, and render me more equal, and perhaps a thing not undesirable, sometimes superior, for inferior who is free. This may be well. But what if God have seen and death ensue? Then I shall be no more. And Adam, wedded to another Eve, shall live with her, enjoying, I extinct, a death to think. Confirmed then I resolve, Adam shall share with me in bliss or woe. So dear I love him, that with him all deaths I could endure. Without him live no life.
Enter Adam, which means the end of the soliloquy.
Hast thou not wondered, Adam, at my stay? Thee I have missed, and thought it long, deprived thy presence. Agony of love till now not felt, nor shall be twice. For nevermore mean I to try what rash untried I sought, the pain of absence from thy sight. But strange hath been the cause, and wonderful to hear. This tree is not as we are told, a tree of danger tasted, nor to evil unknown opening the way, but of divine effect to open eyes and make them gods who taste, and hath been tasted such. The serpent, wise, or not restrained as we, or not obeying, hath eaten of the fruit, and it become not dead as we are threatened, but thenceforth endued with human voice and human sense, reasoning to admiration, and with me persuasively hath so prevailed that I have also tasted and have also found the effects to correspond. Opener mine eyes, dim erst, dilated spirits, ampler heart, and growing up to Godhead.
Beelzebub enters, overhears the speech, then joins Satan.
Chiefly I sought without thee, which for thee chiefly I sought, without thee can despise. For bliss as thou hast part, to me is bliss, tedious, unshared with thee, and odious soon. Thou therefore also taste, that equal lot may join us, equal joy as equal love, lest thou not tasting, different degree disjoin us, and I then too late renounce deity for thee, when fate will not permit.
O fairest of creation, last and best of all of God's works, creature in whom excelled whatever can to sight or thought be formed, thou art thou lost, how on a sudden lost, defaced, deflowered, and now to death devote, and me with thine hath ruined, for with thee certain my resolution is to die.
Death enters, overhears the speech, then joins Satan. Adam continues talking to Eve.
How can I live without thee? How forego thy sweet converse, and love so dearly joined, to live again in these wild woods forlorn? The link of nature draws me, flesh of flesh, bone of my bone thou art, and from thy state mine never shall be parted, bliss or woe. Perhaps thou shalt not die. Perhaps the fact is not so heinous now, for tasted fruit, profaned first by the serpent, by him first, made common and hallowed ere our taste, nor yet on him found deadly. Yet he lives, higher degree of life, inducement strong, to us as likely tasting to attain. Proportional assent, which cannot be, but to be gods or angels, demigods, nor can I think that God, creator-wise, though threatening, will in earnest so destroy us, his prime creatures, dignified so high, be frustrate, do, undo, and labor lose, not well conceived of God, who through his power creation could repeat, yet would be loath us to abolish, lest the adversary triumph and say, fickle their state whom God most favors, who can please him long? Me first he ruined, now mankind, whom will he next? However, I with thee have fixed my lot, certain to undergo like doom if death consort with me. Death is to me as life, so forcible, within my heart I feel. The bond of nature draw me to my own in thee, for what thou art is mine. Our state cannot be severed. We are one flesh. To lose thee were to lose myself.
Oh, glorious trial of exceeding love, illustrious evidence, example high, engaging me to emulate, but short of thy perfection. How shall I attain, Adam, from whose dear side I boast me sprung, and gladly of our union hear thee speak? One heart, one soul in both, thereof good proof this day affords, declaring thee resolved, rather than death or aught than death more dread shall separate us, linked in love so dear, to undergo with me one guilt, one crime, if any be, of tasting this fair fruit. Were it I thought death menaced would ensue this my attempt, I would sustain alone the worst and not persuade thee. But I feel far otherwise the event, not death, but life augmented, opened eyes, new hopes, new joys, taste so divine that what of sweet before hath touched my sense, flat seems to this and harsh on my experience. Adam, freely taste, and fear of death delivered to the winds.
So before Adam, before you start, Bud,
Mhm.
the stage direction is Adam eats, Mammon enters, overhears next speech, then joins Satan. So what does Milton put forward as Adam's motivation for eating the apple? In scripture, it just says she gives it to him and he eats it. So all of these speeches are philosophical reflections about that moment
It's
and what it means and how it happened. And the motivation internal to the character is gone into in great depth by the poet in a way that the scripture itself doesn't, but may or may not imply. I mean, Milton does this very, very well, but it doesn't mean he's right. What is Milton? What is Adam's motivation according to Milton?
Love.
Is it love or is it the fear of being alone?
How can I live without thee?
Yeah,
Mm.
that can be read as love. I mean, Valentine's Day poetry would be nothing without Hallmark cards that say things like that. Is it true?
No.
No, it's not. But he believes it to be true. And one of the, according to Milton, and one of the things about this form poetry, is that in order to make these speeches, the characters have to have knowledge that realistically they can only have after they've fallen. When they have a knowledge of good and evil, that's, you sort of have to suspend that disbelief, which you have to do in drama and in poetry all the time. Suspend that critical factor. Wait, how can he say all this if he hasn't already fallen? How can, well, he can't. This is a dramatic, staged kind of working out of these theological questions. So Greg is correct. Adam is wrong. Okay, he can live.
He can live,
Without
but he'll be
Eve.
lonely. He doesn't want to be lonely.
He lacks the faith that God will provide him another mate.
Mhm.
He is
Sure, but
thinking
God-
only about his love for her, and he is putting that love above his love for his maker who gifted her to him out of himself.
Mhm.
That's the theological problem here, the theological problem with what Milton has presented. Adam states a plausible fallen mentality, but he's fallen before he eats the fruit, because he's already decided that he can't live without Eve. When it is God, he can't live without. Okay, very important point.
So by falling in love, he fell.
No. Well,
I think so.
let's put it this way. He thinks so. He
Okay.
thinks he has no choice. And yeah, when you think you have no choice, you're already fallen. So
That's very naughty, Charlie.
it is very
Well,
naughty.
the next line is to live again in these wild woods forlorn. It sounds like he doesn't want to be lonely again, and he has no faith that if he does the right thing and follows God's commandment, that it'll all work out.
It apparently doesn't even occur to him,
Mhm.
at least not in these selections. But that's what we should be learning and learning from this and understanding theologically, at least.
I think that by falling in love with Eve, his attention has been turned from God.
Yeah,
So that's the original sin, is falling
Is it
in
love
love.
or infatuation?
Spoken like a man recently married.
Well, I think that maybe,
Is it love or
the-
infatuation now?
oh, sorry.
Let,
That's Matt. I think that's what I was saying. I was gonna say,
Oh.
yes. It's not love as much as he's fixated on her.
yeah.
He said infatuation, yeah.
Isn't falling in love a fascinating idiom?
Yeah,
Is falling in general a good thing?
no,
Ew.
No, it causes injury. You know, it makes you look foolish. Falling in love and loving are not the same thing.
Mhm.
Yes, you could ascend into love, but we don't. We fall.
Yeah,
Well, it feels like you're
To break
falling.
something.
yeah. I mean, that's where the hormonal rush, as we now understand it, of romantic love coming on strong. Yeah, there is a feeling of lightheadedness, which has that sensation of falling. That's why the idiom came into being. But how long does that last?
Well, you know, for a long time.
Depends on how long she strings you along.
Oh,
Poor
Oh,
Greg, have you been misused?
poor Greg.
Greg's perspective is interesting if his way of expressing it is unfortunate. But when God commands us to love one another, first he commands us to love him, and then he commands us to love our neighbor as ourself. He doesn't command us to fall into that love. He commands us to enter reasonably into the state in which that love can best be expressed, which may or may not involve that feeling of falling. And it may come at the beginning or it may not. It may come later or it may never.
If you fall in love without knowing the person, are you really in love with the person or with the sensation of falling in love?
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. You want real love, listen to the song "Do You Love Me" and Fiddler on the Roof. You know,
Mhm.
for 25 years, I've milked your cow, given you children.
Washed your socks.
Yeah, exactly. Why talk about love right now?
You
But
know,
do
in
you?
Eve's defense, she's never been lied to before.
Right. Very important.
She is not familiar with deception. Having said all that, she is clearly intrigued before she eats the apple. I mean, she's already cajoling herself. She has no reason to believe that snake, but she does.
Yeah.
And then her very first thought is, well, maybe God didn't see me, this doesn't really matter. But then her next thought is, I don't want to be alone.
Right.
So I'm going to ensnare Adam because I don't believe in God either. In theory, Adam could have prayed to God and asked to release Eve from her sin. In theory, if there is no sin God can't forgive, if he had more faith, he might have rescued her.
Right. Yeah.
Yet he condemns them both.
Well, it seems that Eve was flattered, which is funny because that seems to be a timeless thing for
Women?
females, apparently. And then, she experienced the pride and then the fear of being alone.
Right.
And I mean, I think she also experienced the desire to hold godlike power.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
She eats the apple and she feels the power of knowledge, the power of awareness. It's not really power, it's a feeling of power. It's just like falling in love is not love, it's the feeling of wanting to love, which is not exactly the same thing. God willing, one leads to another. and stays that way. But it doesn't always work out that way.
I'm interested to hear is when I first read this 30 odd years ago, I was just bowled over by the extraordinary power of Milton's language.
Yeah.
He could express so much, so succinctly, so simultaneously abstractly and yet viscerally.
Yeah, very concrete.
Yes, tremendously. But, you know, reading it this time, it was very hard to read. I mean, it was like watching somebody commit suicide and not being able to stop them. There was
It's
something
painful.
really horrible about Eve deluding herself and Adam. You know, there's some cowardice in not being prepared to go it alone if that's what God intends.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it was much harder for me to experience the fall with them.
Well, it should be, because it's a very painful thing. It's like when we do the participatory passion on Palm Sunday. You know, it's hard for the congregation to be the crowd and say, crucify him. But it makes you feel it in a way you can't by any other method. And the first part you said about Milton's language, that is the power of poetry as a genre or as a mode of expression. The ability to be both concrete and abstract at the same time and concisely. And when you write poetic dialogue, even dialoguing monologues, which we see a lot of here, you can double that effect. I mean, that's the power of poetry and the wonderful. It's wonderful that Milton chose to do this story in this way, or to interpret this story in this way, because that's what he's doing. He's giving us a commentary on the traditional interpretation in Christianity of the biblical story. And yeah, it is very powerful. And let's finish up by going back to that and having Adam. This is Adam after he eats the apple.
Can I ask one more question?
Oh, of course.
It seems that the word attachment comes up with Adam, and
Attachment.
yeah. And I, you know, this idea that attachment is somehow a mistake in life. Is there a sin that is that true? You know, when you talk about sin,
It depends on what you're talking about being attached to.
so his attachment to Eve leads to his downfall.
Yes.
His choice to eat the apple, right?
His
Or at least that's what
choice
it
to
seems to be.
be attached to Eve in her sin. Right. There are some, you know,
It's like fear of loss. This
yeah. He was more afraid of being alone. He was more afraid of being, it's not being alone in the abstract. He was more afraid of being without her specifically, more afraid of that than he was of God's wrath.
Mm-hmm.
And that's his biggest mistake in this telling of it. Right. And we'll see in this account, if we get passing of the buck, when God shows up, which is the next speech after Adam's. So, Bud, let me put the text back on the screen. Go for it.
Eve, now I see thou art exact of taste and elegant, of sapience, no
Correct.
small, what is it?
Sapiens.
Sapience, no small part, since to each meaning savor we apply, and palate call judicious. I the praise yield thee so well this day thou hast purveyed. Much pleasure we have lost, while we abstained from this delightful fruit, nor known till now true relish, tasting. If such pleasure be in things to us forbidden, it might be wished for this one tree had been forbidden 10. But come, so well freshed, now let us play, as meet is after such delicious fare. But never did thy beauty since the day I saw thee first and wedded thee, adorned with all perfections. So inflame my sense with ardor to enjoy thee, fairer now than ever, bounty of this virtuous tree.
So he has definitely fallen.
Well, so Father, I'm a little confused as to the timing of this. Is he saying that here that they have some, because he says since they've abstained, they've missed on some of the delights of pleasure. Does that say that they haven't yet had sex or been married?
No. While we abstain from this delightful fruit, meaning the fruit he has just eaten, the
Oh, I
fruit
see.
of
Okay.
the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Milton is pretty clear, and that was a few sessions back, that sex is not the fall, and that sex is one of God's goods planned from the beginning, and Adam and Eve enjoyed each other in that way prior to the fall. And that's taking a position against the majority of Puritans, of which Milton had been one. All right, good question. Thank you. And he's
Perhaps
calling the
it's,
tree virtuous.
Perhaps it's the perversion of all those things.
Exactly.
Exactly.
They lust after each other after the fruit rather than genuinely desiring a union.
Yeah. What's the distinction? What's the difference?
Love.
Yeah. And not just the feeling, but the desire for union and the desire for the pleasure alone are not the same thing. Because you may need the desire to make the union, but you don't need the union to get the desire satisfied. And the former is love in God's sense,
Selflessness.
erotic love between man and woman. The other is just lust. C.S. Lewis puts it very, very well. He talks about, he speaks of lust. So you see a sailor stalking the streets, and they say he needs a woman. Of course, this is exactly what he does not want. He wants a woman in the sense that a smoker wants a cigarette. And of course, once you are done with the pack, you don't keep it, you throw it away.
Uh-oh.
And that,
Well, you'll crumple it
different.
up before you throw it away.
yeah, that's the distinction. That's,
And then maybe you start smoking stronger cigarettes.
yeah,
Oh.
yeah, well said, well said. All right, we forgot to cast the sun. So let me take that up. And this is where in the scripture it says God was walking in the garden in the heat of the day. Where art thou, Adam? Wont with joy to meet my coming seen far off? I miss thee here, not pleased, thus entertained with solitude, where obvious duty erewhile appeared unsought. Or come I less conspicuous, or what change absents thee, or what chance detains? Come forth.
I heard thee in the garden, and of thy voice, afraid, being naked, hid myself.
Okay. My voice thou oft hast heard and hast not feared, but still rejoiced. how is it now become so dreadful to thee? That thou art naked, who hath told thee? Hast thou eaten of the tree whereof I gave thee charge thou shouldst not eat?
Oh, heaven, in evil strait this day I stand before my judge, either to undergo myself the total crime, or to accuse my other self, the partner of my life, who's failing while her faith to me remains, I should conceal and not expose to blame, but my complaint. But strict necessity subdues me, and calamitous constraint, lest on my head both sin and punishment, however insupportable, be all devolved. Though should I hold my peace, yet thou wouldst easily detect what I conceal. This woman who thou madest me be my help, and gavest me as thy perfect gift, so good, so fit, so acceptable, so divine, that from her hand I could suspect no ill. And what she did, whatever in itself, her doing seemed to justify the deed. She gave me of the tree, and I did eat.
So he's not only blaming Eve, he's also lying about his own, at least as Milton put it, his own motivation at the time he ate the tree, as if he didn't know what it would do. So, and I think God the Son is a little tiffed. Was she thy God, that her thou didst obey before his voice? Or was she made thy God superior or but equal, that to her thou didst resign thy manhood, and the place wherein God set thee above her made of thee? And for thee, whose perfection far excelled hers in all real dignity, adorned she was indeed, and lovely to attract thy love, but not thy subjection and her rule. Say, woman, what is this which thou hast done?
The serpent me beguiled, and I did eat.
Just have to point out here that what God actually says in Scripture is only that last line. And for this, we should hear a feminist perspective on this particular speech. Thy sorrow I will greatly multiply by thy conception. Children thou shalt bring in sorrow forth, and to thy husband's will thine shall submit. He over thee shall rule. To Adam, because thou hast hearkened to the voice of thy wife, and eaten of the tree concerning which I charged thee, saying, thou shalt not eat thereof. Cursed is the ground for thy sake. Thou in sorrow shalt eat thereof all the days of thy life. Thorns also and thistles it shall bring thee forth unbid. Thou shalt eat the herb of the field. In the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat thy bread, till thou return unto the ground. For thou out of the ground wast taken. Know thy birth, for dust thou art, and shalt to dust return. The Son retires to his throne.
O Eve, in evil hour thou didst give ear to that false worm, of whomsoever taught to counterfeit man's voice, true in our fall. Can you advance it?
Sorry.
False in our promised rising. Since our eyes opened, we find indeed, and find we know both good and evil. Good lost and evil got. Bad fruit of knowledge. If this be to know, which leaves us naked thus, of honor void, of innocence, of faith or purity, our wanted ornaments now soiled and stained. Would thou hast hearkened to my words and stayed with me as I besought thee, when that strange desire of wandering this unhappy morn I know not whence possessed thee. We had then remained still happy, not as now, despoiled of all our good, shamed, naked, miserable. You do it, that's it. Let none henceforth seek needless cause to approve. Thy faith they owe. When earnestly they seek such proof, conclude, they then begin to fail.
What words have passed thy lips, Adam severe? Imputest thou that to my default, or will of wandering as thou call'st it, which who knows, but might as ill have happened thou being by, or to thyself perhaps? Hadst thou been there, or hear the attempt, thou couldst not have discerned fraud in the serpent, speaking as he spake, no ground of enmity between us known. Why he should mean me ill, or seek to harm? Was I to have never parted from thy side, as good have grown there still a lifeless rib? Being as I am, why didst thou, the head, command me absolutely not to go, going into such danger as thou sayest? Too facile then, thou didst not much gainsay, nay, didst permit, approve, and fair dismiss. Hadst thou been firm and fixed in thy dissent, neither had I transgressed, nor thou with me.
So they've made a pretty good point here, haven't they? Eve has. And it was mentioned earlier that she's never, not only had she never been lied to, but how can they possibly know that lying is possible without knowledge of good and evil? They can't, but they know what God said. And they know that what the serpent, and that she knows what the serpent said is the opposite of what God said. So you don't even need to know that it's a lie. You just know that it's contrary to what God said.
They also both know that there is an enemy bent on their destruction. They both know that.
Right.
And they may not know how that enemy works, but if somebody tells you something that is absolutely categorically antithetical to what God says, that should be a clue.
Yes. And that holds true today.
Quite. Quite.
All right. And here the other demons keep entering the company. Moloch enters, overhears the next speech, then joins Satan's group. Adam?
Incidentally, these satanic figures matter. Astarte was the god of fertility. She was also the goddess of lust.
Right.
So she shows up when Eve is thinking about being disloyal and being powerful in her own right. And Beelzebub is a god of violence, as is Moloch. And Mammon is a god of saturation. So, you know, this is not coincidental. It's almost like they're being drawn by the nature of man's sin.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Nice.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's a visual as the sin builds, the figures of sin pile on, you know, the other temptations, the other chances that you're likely to, because it just keeps piling up. It gets more complex. It seems to me that God gave them focus. He gave them free will, but they had a focus about the life they were to live, the things that they were to do, and the one thing that they were not to do.
Right.
And that's the Garden of Eden. And the
Amen.
only way to destroy that is with a distraction that causes people to lose their focus. Falling in love makes you lose your focus. And then if it's true love, then together you two are able to have a focus, a common focus. You still have free will, you still have some independence in the marriage, but you have together, you're wedded and you have a common focus. And that's, that's harder to break. But once you get that little distraction that changes your priority of some shiny bright object that
Yeah.
seems like maybe this might be better, then you're open to sin.
There you go.
It sounds like Milton is saying that in the garden before all the problems that Adam had, a purpose, chores to accomplish, and Eve was assisting in accomplishing those things. So even in paradise, life had purpose,
Right.
and the purpose wasn't just to be in love and nothing else, but that they had work to do. It was,
Right. Yeah, very important. God gave mankind, male and female, a job. Useful work. Let's let Bud give the Adam speech. Bud?
Yes. Is this the love? Is this the recompense of mine to thee? Ingrateful Eve, expressed immutable when thou wert lost? Not I, who might have lived and enjoyed immortal bliss, yet willingly chose rather than death with thee? What? And am I now unupbraid as the cause of thy transgressing? Not enough severe, it seems, in my restraint. What could I more? I warned thee, I admonished thee, foretold the danger and the lurking enemy. But confidence then bore thee on, secure either it to meet no danger or to find matter of glorious trial. Can you advance it there? Trial. Where the heck am I? Right.
Very top line.
Okay. There. Okay. There. Okay. There you go. Matter of glorious trial, and perhaps I also erred in overmuch admiring what seemed in thee so perfect, that I thought no evil durst to tempt thee. But I rue that error now, which has become my crime, and thou thy accuser. Thus it shall befall him who to worth in woman overtrusting lets her will rule. Restraint she will not brook, and left to herself, if evil thence ensue, she first his weak indulgence will accuse.
Let me interject here. As Eve turns away because she is feeling the shame of the correctness of his words, despite how harsh they sound and how much he is failing to take responsibility for his own actions, even in blaming her, what he's saying about her is still true. And the capitalization of will, lets her will rule, triggered something in me. Remember, we talked a few sessions back that Milton was probably the first great admirer of Shakespeare. I mean, the first great knowledgeable admirer of Shakespeare. And it almost seems that this could be the argument that Romeo and Juliet have in hell, because they have both wound up dead by suicide, the unforgivable sin in their society and in church understanding of that time. And they'd be pretty ticked off at each other, I think, because they too fell. And I can see Milton sort of being, if not influenced by that directly, certainly indirectly. All right, Bud, why don't we finish this speech?
Oh, why did God, creator wise, that peopled highest heaven with spirits masculine, create at last this novelty on earth, this fair defect of nature, and not the fill of the world at once with men as angels without feminine? Or find some other way to generate mankind? This mischief had not then befalled him, and more than shall befall innumerable disturbances on earth through feminine snares and straight conjunction with this sex. For either he never shall find outfit mate, but such as some misfortune brings him, or mistake, or whom he wishes most shall seldom gain, though her perverseness, but shall see her gained by a far worse, or if she love, withheld by parents, or his happiest choice too late shall meet, already linked and wedlock bound to a fell adversary, his hate or shame, which infinite calamity shall cause to human life. Can you advance it?
Milton is channeling his first marriage here.
Mhm.
As
Parents.
Oh, that one.
his first wife was literally the daughter of his adversary,
Oh, geez.
because his wife's family were royalists and he was the propagandist of regicide
Oh, my gosh.
for the revolutionary government. But they came back together. His first wife was with him for a month and then ran back to her father. And then her father fell out of favor with the regime and she ran back to her father, and her ran back to him, Milton, for protection. And they all lived quasi-happily for a time thereafter. They did come back together, and that's important for the next couple of speeches. Okay, because this is all about, my God, why don't I divorce you right now? And
Could you
if
move
he's
it
gonna
down?
say, he's gonna get real mean here, bud. So,
Oh,
channel
right.
your inner male rage right here.
Oh, I will. Can you bring it up about 2 lines though? I missed about 2 lines here.
All
Oh,
the interaction between Adam and Eve tonight, and now you mentioned Romeo and Juliet, and there's Juliet deceiving Romeo.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting mirror, isn't it?
Mhm.
By the way, that's Peg, Bud's invisible wife.
yeah.
No, I'm the cat.
She only comes out in daylight. Can you move it up just a little, back a little, two lines? Okay, this is where I left off. Out of my sight, thou spirit, that name best befits thee. With him league thyself as false and hateful. Nothing wants but that thy shape like his and color serpentine may show thy inward fraud, to warn all creatures from thee henceforth, lest that too heavenly form pretended to hellish falsehood snare them. But for thee I had persisted happy, had not thy pride and wandering vanity, when least was safe, rejected my forewarning and disdained not to be trusted, longing to be seen, through by the devil himself, him overweening. Though by the devil himself.
That's
And
it.
then you can
That's the end of
move it
that
down.
speech. Or
And that's
as Hamlet put it, nymph in all thy orisons, in thy orisons be all my sins remembered. Another Shakespearean couple where he just screams at her as if it's all her fault.
Oh, I like those kinds of parts.
They are great parts to play as an actor, but you're also wrong.
Oh.
All right, let's hear Eve's response. This is important.
Forsake me not thus, Adam. Witness heaven, what sincere love and reverence in my heart I bear thee, and unwitting have offended, unhappily deceived. Thy suppliant, I beg, and clasp thy knees, bereave me not. Whereon I live, thy gentle looks, thy aid, thy counsel in this uttermost distress, my only strength and stay, forlorn of thee. Whither shall I betake me? Where subsist? While yet we live, scarce one short hour perhaps. Between us two, let there be peace, both joining, as joined in injuries, one enmity against a foe by doom express assigned us, that cruel serpent. On me exercise not thy hatred for this misery befallen. On me already lost, me than thyself more miserable. Both have sinned, but thou against God only, I against God and thee. And to the place of judgment will return, there with my cries importune heaven, that all the sentence from thy head removed may light on me, sole cause to thee of all this woe, me only just object of his ire.
The son enters and watches. And by the way, Eve is wrong. Adam sinned against God and against Eve, because he had a responsibility as head to stop her. So he sinned against her just as much as she sinned against him. They both sinned equally against God.
So how does Adam feel at this point, Father? Is he still mad at Eve?
Of course, he is.
Oh, yes.
Let's see if his heart melts. That's what Eve is trying to do. And remember, one fact of this situation, they're stuck with each other. Okay.
You and me against the world, babe.
Exactly. Well put, Peg. All right, Adam, let's read this little speech and we'll see if they come to resolution, which, I mean, have they really any choice?
Unwary and too desirous as before, so now of what thou knowest not, who desirest the punishment all on thyself, alas, bear thine own first, ill able to sustain his full wrath, whose thou feelest as yet least part. But rise, let us no more contend, nor blame each other, blamed enough elsewhere, but strive in offices of love, how we may lighten each other's burden in our share of woe.
Restored by thee, vile as I am, to place of new acceptance, hopeful to regain thy love, the sole contentment of my heart. Living or dying, from thee I will not hide what thoughts in my unquiet breast are risen, tending to some relief. In thy power it lies, yet ere conception to prevent the race unblessed, to being yet unbegot. Childless thou art, childless remain, so death shall be deceived his glut, and with us too be forced to satisfy his ravenous maw. But if thou judge it too hard and difficult, conversing, looking, loving, to abstain from love's due rites, nuptial embraces sweet, let us seek death, or he not found, supply with our own hands his office on ourselves. Why stand we here shivering under fears that show no end but death, and have the power of many ways to die the shortest choosing, destruction with destruction to destroy?
Abdiel, one of the angels who did not fall, we haven't heard from in a while, hears the next speech and then joins the son.
Eve, thy contempt of life and pleasure seems to argue in thee something more sublime and excellent than what thy mind contemns. But self-destruction therefore sought refutes that excellence thought in thee and implies not thy contempt, but anguish and regret for loss of life and pleasure overloved. No more be mentioned then of violence against ourselves and willful barrenness that cuts us off from hope and savors only rancor and pride, impatience and despite, reluctance against God, and his just yoke laid on our necks. Remember with what mild and gracious temper he both heard and judged without wrath or reviling. We expected immediate dissolution, which we thought was meant by death that day, when lo to thee pains only in childbearing were foretold, and bring forth soon recompensed with joy, fruit of thy womb. On me the curse a slope glanced on the ground. With labor I must earn my bread. What harm? Idleness had been worse. What better can we do than to place repairing where he judged us, prostrate fall before him reverent, and there confess humbly our faults, pardon beg, with tears watering the ground, and with our sighs the air frequenting, sent from hearts contrite in sign of sorrow unfeigned and humiliation meek. Undoubtedly he will relent and turn from his displeasure. And whose look serene, when angry most he seemed and most severe. What else but favor, grace, and mercy shown?
Raphael enters and escorts the sun forward with Abdiel. Raphael, remember, means the medicine of God, God's medicine, the healing of God. Back to Greg's point that it's no coincidence which divine figure appears in conjunction with which speech. Whoop. And one question is, who is he talking to? It sounds like he's talking to the first couple, right? But he could be talking to the audience too. It's this having learnt, thou hast attained the sum of wisdom. Hope no higher, though all the stars thou knewst by name, and all the ethereal powers, all secrets of the deep, all nature's works, or works of God in heaven, or air, earth, or sea, and all the riches of this world enjoyedst, and all the rule, one empire. Only add deeds to thy knowledge answerable, add faith, add virtue, patience, temperance, add love, by name to come called charity, the soul of all the rest. Then wilt thou not be loath to leave this paradise, but shalt possess a paradise within thee happier far, and great deliverance by Eve's seed to come. Eve's seed being who?
Christ.
Christ, right. And Eve is right in the earlier speech that the remedy for sin and death is life, and their job is to replenish the earth. Is one of God's first commands. The sun drives off the devils with Raphael and Abdiel, and then returns to his throne. This is the final speech of Eve.
Now lead on. In me is no delay. With thee to go is to stay here. Without thee here to stay is to go hence unwilling. Thou to me art all things under heaven, all places thou, who for my willful crime art banished hence. This further consolation yet secure I carry hence. Though all by me is lost, such favor I unworthy am vouchsafed. By me the promised seed shall all restore.
Greg, will you be Milton and end this play for us?
In either hand, the hasting angel caught our lingering parents, and to the eastern gate led them direct, and down the cliff as fast to the subjected plain, then disappeared. Some natural tears they dropped, but whipped them soon, wiped them soon. The world was all before them, where to choose their place of rest, and Providence their guide. They hand in hand with wandering steps and slow, through Eden took their solitary way.
Adam and Eve leave with Raphael during the speech. Then Milton leaves, led by his wife. End.
Does that mean the woman has the last say?
Absolutely, Peg.
Why is that?
Even after all that, Adam learned nothing.
Yeah, really.
At the end of a Shakespearean play, when one of the actors comes out and kind of sums up what you've seen during the play, what is that called? Is that epilogue or what is that?
I think it is epilogue. I think that is
Yeah.
what it's called. Yeah,
So that's kind of what Milton does here.
sort of. Yeah, that's certainly what Professor Richmond has done with these lines from the play. Yeah,
Mhm.
he's made it into that sort of dramatic epilogue, and that's how he's the character of Milton in what we have been reading is sort of created by Professor Richmond out of lines from the epic from Paradise Lost that are of the narrator. He's made the narrator into a character, which in the epic it isn't. And the narrator is the omniscient third person
Yeah.
narrator.
Question.
Joe, yes.
Is Milton serial number one in the American sexual revolution?
You are not the first person to ask this. Many a PhD thesis has been written to this effect because he is actually one of the first persons in English to write a treatise in favor of allowing divorce. Very radical in the 17th century.
Although his reasoning for all of that is highly theological.
Yes.
Yes, marriage is a sacrament, and it is designed to make you more holy. He wouldn't have used that language. He wouldn't have said sacrament. But if marriage is something that God appoints for your sanctification, and you, in your defiance, chose the wrong person, it's desperate for you to escape that person and find the one that God assigned to you, because that is your salvation. What was that great Samuel Johnson line? Something about two people were horrible and God in his mercy brought them together, thereby making two people miserable instead of four.
Was funny. That was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, Samuel Johnson. Oh, I'm sorry. Was that Samuel Johnson or Samuel Jackson?
Quite.
On that note, I'm going to end the recording, and we'll talk briefly after I end the recording about doing this again with different readers, because I think that is always an excellent thing to do, and it is what we planned. So we will log off, if I can figure out how, and return next time with a different version of Scene 11.